3 days before my wedding, my father called and said he wouldn't walk me down the aisle. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who cheered at every soccer game, who promised head dance at my wedding someday, just destroyed my heart with 8 words. Clara needs me more right now, sweetheart. My sister had won again. She'd stolen my scholarship 12 years ago, and now she was stealing my wedding day. But when she saw who stepped up to replace him, her face went white as my wedding dress. The phone call came while I was addressing the last batch of wedding invitations, my fingers cramped from writing 200 names in careful script. Marcus was in the kitchen making dinner, humming off-key to some old rock song, completely unaware that our world was about to implode. "Annette, honey, I need to talk to you about Saturday." Dad's voice sounded strange, rehearsed, like Head practiced these words in front of a mirror. "What about Saturday? You mean my wedding day?" I set down my pen, already feeling dread creep up my spine like ice water. Clara's getting married too. Same day. She needs me to walk her down the aisle, and I can't be in 2 places at once. The invitation it'd been holding fluttered to the floor. "What do you mean, same day? Clara's been engaged for 3 months. She never mentioned a wedding date. She just finalized everything with the venue in Burlington. You know how these things work out sometimes. Dates get mixed up. Like this was some cosmic accident instead of calculated destruction. Dad, I sent you my wedding invitation 6 months ago. You RSVP'd yes. You helped me pick the venue. You've known about this date for almost a year." Silence stretched between us like a chasm. In the background, I could hear Clara's voice, sharp and insistent, though I couldn't make out the words. "Sweetheart, try to understand. Clara's more fragile right now. She's been through so much with the divorce and Jason's deployment and starting the new business. She really needs her father on her special day." My throat felt like sandpaper, and I don't— "You have Marcus. You have that wonderful group of friends from the hospital. Clara doesn't have the same support system. As if love was a limited resource that had to be rationed, and Clara always got the bigger portion. I'm 28 years old, Dad. I've been planning this wedding for 2 years. I've saved every penny from my nursing shifts to pay for everything myself because I wanted to be independent. But the one thing I couldn't do alone was walk down that aisle. I know, honey, and am proud of how strong you've always been. That's exactly why I know you'll understand. Clara needs me more. Always the same refrain. Clara needed more attention when we were kids because she was sensitive. Clara needed more money for college because her grades weren't as good. Clara needed more emotional support because life was harder for her somehow. How much are you giving her for this wedding?" Another pause. "That's not really your concern." "Dad, how much?" 50,000. But that's because her job at the construction company isn't paying much yet, and with everything she's been through. $50,000. It'd been working double shifts for 2 years, picking up overtime in the ICU, saving every dollar while living in a tiny apartment with secondhand furniture. My entire wedding budget was $8,000, and it'd stretched it like elastic to cover everything from the dress to the flowers to the small reception at the community center. I see. So she gets $50,000 and your presents, and I get a phone call 3 days before my wedding explaining why I'm not worth either. That's not fair, Annette. You know I love you both equally." Equally, the word tasted bitter in my mouth. Nothing about our relationship had ever been equal. I thought about Mom's funeral 12 years ago, when I was 16 and Clara was 19. Dad had been so broken, so lost, that Clara stepped into the role of family organizer with military precision. She made the arrangements, fielded the casseroles from neighbors, managed Dad's grief like a personal assistant, and somehow, in the process, she'd become the indispensable daughter while I became the afterthought. "I have to finish addressing these invitations," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Honey, don't hang up angry. Maybe I can make it to your reception if Clara's ceremony ends early enough. Burlington's only 3 hours away. If Clara's ceremony ended early, if the roads were clear, if she didn't need him for photographs or family obligations or any of the 1,000 things that would inevitably take priority over celebrating my marriage. Goodbye, Dad." I ended the call and stared at the phone in my hand like it was something toxic. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face concerned. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Worse. I've seen my future. And apparently, I'll be walking down the aisle alone." The words came out in a rush, everything tumbling over itself as I explained the phone call, the $50,000, Clara's mysterious same-day wedding that had materialized out of nowhere. Marcus listened without interrupting, his jaw getting tighter with each detail. "This is about the scholarship, isn't it?" he said finally. "This is about everything. The scholarship was just the beginning." Marcus knew the story, of course. How Clara had somehow convinced the state university that I was withdrawing my full-ride academic scholarship just weeks before graduation. How the paperwork had been filed in my name with what looked like my signature. How by the time Wed figured out what happened, the scholarship had been redistributed and my spot in the honors program had been given away. Clara's explanation at the time was that she'd been trying to help. I'd mentioned being nervous about leaving home for college, about being far from Dad after Mom's death, and Clara thought she was doing me a favor by making the decision for me. She'd even found me a spot at the local community college, already filled out the application, already arranged for financial aid. At 17, devastated by the loss of my dream and confused by the bureaucratic nightmare of trying to restore a scholarship that had already been given to someone else, I'd believed her. Dad had believed her too. Clara was just looking out for her little sister who was overwhelmed by big decisions. It took me 5 years to finish my nursing degree through community college and state school, taking classes part-time while working to pay for everything. Clara, meanwhile, had somehow landed a business internship that turned into a full-time position at Dad's construction company, despite having no relevant experience or education. "She knew about our wedding date," Marcus said, pulling me back to the present. "She's been to the venue for that hospital fundraiser. She's seen our engagement photos with the date announcement. This isn't a coincidence. Of course it's not. But Dad will never see it that way. Clara's the victim of circumstances, and I'm the daughter who's strong enough to handle disappointment." Marcus sat down across from me, his expression fierce. "You are strong enough to handle disappointment. But you shouldn't have to handle betrayal, not from your own father. Has all the family I have left? No, has not. You have me. You have Sarah and the gang from work. You have people who love you without keeping score, without making you compete for scraps of attention." I picked up the fallen invitation from the floor, smoothing out the corner where it had bent. Mr. and Mrs. Robert Chen, colleagues from the pediatric ward who'd become like second parents to me. They'd be there Saturday, along with a dozen other families who'd welcomed me into their lives without conditions or competitions. Maybe I should call him back, try to reason with him. "What would you say? That you need him more than Clara does? That your wedding is more important than hers? You'd be playing her game, and she's had 12 years of practice." Marcus was right, and I hated that he was right. Any attempt to fight for Dad's attention would just prove Clara's point that I was selfish, demanding, unable to understand how difficult things were for her. So what do I do? Walk down the aisle alone? Ask one of my nurse friends to give me away? Pretend this doesn't feel like my heart getting ripped out. You do exactly what you've always done. You show everyone, including your father, what kind of person you really are. You have the most beautiful, joyful, love-filled wedding that anyone's ever seen, and when he realizes what he missed, what he chose to miss, he'll have to live with that for the rest of his life. I looked at the stack of invitations still waiting to be addressed. Each one represented people who'd chosen to be part of our celebration, who'd made room in their schedules and budgets to witness Marcus and me promise our lives to each other. People who didn't need to be convinced or bribed or manipulated into showing up. "I love you." I told Marcus, meaning it more than I'd ever meant anything. "I love you too. And Saturday is going to be perfect, with or without your father, but especially without your sister's drama. If only I'd known that Clara wasn't planning to stay away from my wedding. If only I'd understood that she was just getting started." Sarah Martinez burst through my apartment door at 7 a.m. the next morning, armed with coffee and the kind of righteous fury that only a best friend can muster. She'd been my roommate during nursing school, my maid of honor, and the closest thing to a sister I'd ever wanted. "I've been up all night researching your psychotic sibling, and you're not going to believe what I found." She dumped a manila folder on my kitchen table, along with printouts that looked like they'd been pulled from every social media platform known to humanity. Sarah worked part-time as a background investigator for a law firm, which meant she had both the skills and the suspicious nature necessary to dig up dirt that most people would never think to look for. Sarah, it's too early for detective work. It's never too early to expose a fraud. Look at this. She spread out a series of screenshots from Clara's Facebook page, each one time-stamped and highlighted in yellow marker. March 15th. Clara posts about engagement to Jason. March 22nd. She comments on your engagement announcement with congratulations and heart emojis. April 10th. She likes your post about setting a wedding date. April 30th. She shares your venue's promotional post about summer wedding packages. I studied the images, coffee growing cold in my hand. I don't understand what you're showing me. She knew your date, Annette. She's known it for months. But look at this. Sarah flipped to a new set of screenshots. June 1st, Clara posts about wedding planning stress and how difficult it is to find the perfect venue. June 15th, she's touring reception halls. July 20th, she puts down a deposit at the Burlington Country Club for the same weekend as mine. For the exact same date. Not the weekend, not close to the same time. August 22nd, 2024, your wedding day. The dates swam in front of my eyes like accusations. There was no way this was coincidental. No way Clara had simply forgotten or mixed up calendars or fallen victim to booking errors. There's more. Sarah pulled out her phone and opened Instagram. Look at Clara's story highlights from last month. She scrolled to a collection of posts labeled wedding planning and clicked on a video. Clara's voice filled my kitchen, bright and excited as she toured what looked like an elegant ballroom. And the best part is, we can have the ceremony and reception all in one place, so family doesn't have to travel between venues. Dad's going to love how easy this makes everything for him. The timestamp showed the video was posted 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks, and Shed already been planning to make things easy for Dad by keeping him close to home instead of letting him travel the 3 hours to my wedding. She's been planning this for months, I said, the realization settling like lead in my stomach. It gets worse. I called my cousin Bethany, the one who works at the Burlington Country Club. She confirmed that Clara specifically requested August 22nd, even though they had 12 other dates available that month. When Bethany mentioned it seemed like an unusual choice for a rushed wedding, Clara said it was perfect because it would solve some family drama. Solve family drama by creating it. By forcing Dad to choose between his daughters and making sure Shed be the obvious choice. I also found private messages. Sarah's voice got quieter, more serious. Bethany sent me screenshots. Clara's been texting with your cousin Julie about the wedding plans. She handed me her phone, and I read the message thread with growing horror. I just think it's funny that Annette acts like she's so independent, but still expects Daddy to walk her down the aisle like she's some kind of princess. Maybe if Shed stayed closer to home instead of running off to play nurse in the big city, Shed understand how much Dad needs family around him. Honestly, I'm doing him a favor. He's been stressing about making that long drive to her little community center wedding when he should be focused on celebrating with people who actually appreciate him. Each message was a small knife, precisely placed and deliberately twisted. Clara hadn't just stolen my wedding date. She'd been poisoning my relationships for months, painting me as the selfish daughter who'd abandoned family in favor of career and independence. How long has she been doing this? I asked. From what I can piece together? Years. Julie showed me messages going back to when you first got engaged. Clara's been building this narrative that you don't really need Dad anymore, that you've outgrown the family, that you're too proud to ask for help but expect it anyway. I thought about all the times I'd called Dad over the past year, only to have the conversations feel stilted and awkward. All the times Head seemed distracted or distant, like his mind was somewhere else. All the invitations to family gatherings that somehow never reached me. The updates about relatives that I learned secondhand through social media. She's been intercepting my communications with him, hasn't she? Not intercepting exactly, but definitely filtering. Julie said, Clara always has an explanation for why you can't make it to things, why you're too busy with work, why you don't want to be bothered with small-town family stuff. The manipulation was so thorough, so systematic, that I felt dizzy trying to trace all the threads. Every missed connection, every awkward conversation, every moment when Dad had seemed confused by something I'd said or done, now made horrible sense. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Why would she do all this? Sarah's expression softened. Because you got out. Because you built a life that didn't revolve around managing other people's emotions and cleaning up other people's messes. Because you fell in love with someone who sees your worth without making you prove it every day. But she has a good job. She's engaged. She's getting everything she wants. She's getting everything you gave up when she stole your scholarship. Your job was supposed to be her consolation prize for not being smart enough to earn her own opportunities. Your life was supposed to be the backup plan that made her choices look better by comparison. I stared at the photographs and messages scattered across my table, evidence of a campaign so calculated and cruel that it took my breath away. This wasn't sibling rivalry or family drama. This was deliberate psychological warfare designed to isolate me from the one parent I had left. I have to show him. I have to make him see what she's been doing. Are you sure? Once you open this door, there's no closing it. Your family will either heal or explode completely. I thought about Saturday, about walking down the aisle alone while Dad stood 3 hours away, convinced that I didn't need him, didn't value him, had chosen my new life over our family bond. It's already exploded. Clara made sure of that. The question is whether Dad deserves the chance to understand what really happened. Then we're going to Burlington. Sarah said, already reaching for her car keys. Because if we're doing this, we're doing it right. With evidence, with witnesses, and with backup in case things go nuclear. As we gathered the printed messages and testimonies, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to discover something even worse than wedding sabotage. Clara's manipulations had been too precise, too effective, too comprehensive. This level of deception required practice. And if she'd been lying about my relationship with Dad, what else had she been lying about? The 3-hour drive to Burlington felt like traveling back in time, each familiar landmark reminding me of the life I'd left behind and the dreams that had been derailed before I'd even known they were under attack. But this time, I wasn't the confused 17-year-old who'd accepted Clara's explanations and Dad's disappointment. This time, I was bringing receipts. The house looked smaller than I remembered, the blue paint more faded, the garden more overgrown. Dad's pickup truck sat in the driveway next to a red Honda Civic that I recognized as Clara's car. She was already here, probably preparing her defenses for what she assumed would be another tearful confrontation about the wedding. Marcus squeezed my hand as we walked up the front steps. Remember, we're here for facts, not feelings. Don't let her redirect the conversation. Sarah carried the folder of evidence like a briefcase, her expression all business. And if she tries to gaslight you, I'm shutting it down immediately. No family politeness, no giving her the benefit of the doubt. I rang the doorbell instead of using my key, a small declaration that I was here as a visitor seeking truth rather than a daughter coming home for comfort. Dad opened the door looking older than his 58 years, gray stubble on his cheeks and worry lines around his eyes that hadn't been there at Christmas. Annette? What are you doing here? The wedding's tomorrow. We need to talk, Dad. All of us. About the wedding. About Clara. And about some things that have been kept from you. His face clouded with confusion and what looked like dread. Honey, if this is about me walking Clara down the aisle, I've already explained that I can't be in 2 places at once. It's not about that. It's about why you think you have to choose in the first place. Clara appeared behind him, her smile bright and artificial as fresh paint. Annette! What a surprise! Shouldn't you be getting ready for your big day? I'm sure there are a million last-minute details to handle. She looked exactly the same as always. Blonde hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, clothes expensive but understated. Everything about her appearance was designed to project success, competence, and the kind of effortless beauty that made other women feel inadequate. Hello, Clara. Actually, I'm here because of some information that's come to light about our family situation. Information that Dad needs to hear. Dad stepped back to let us into the living room, his movements uncertain. The space was exactly as I remembered. Mom's photos on the mantel, her furniture still arranged the same way, her presence lingering in every familiar corner. What kind of information? Clara's voice carried a note of warning, like she was reminding me of boundaries I wasn't supposed to cross. I sat down across from them, Sarah and Marcus flanking me like bodyguards. Information about when you knew my wedding date. About the messages you've been sending to family members, about the conversations you've been having with Dad regarding my relationship with him. Clara's laugh was light and dismissive. Oh, honey, are you really here to relitigate family communications? That seems like a lot of drama for the day before your wedding. Sarah, show them the Facebook screenshots. Sarah opened the folder and laid out the printed images in chronological order, each one clearly showing Clara's awareness of my wedding plans months before Shed supposedly booked her own venue. Dad leaned forward, studying the dates with the careful attention he usually reserved for construction blueprints. Clara, these show that you knew about Annette's wedding date in March. You didn't book your venue until July. So, wedding planning takes time. Just because I knew her date doesn't mean I could control when Jason got leave from his deployment or when venues had availability. But you specifically requested August 22nd, I said, even though the venue had 12 other dates available that month. Clara's composure flickered for just a moment. Who told you that? Does it matter? Is it true or not? Dad was still studying the printouts, his expression growing more troubled with each piece of evidence. Clara, why didn't you mention that you knew Annette's date when you told me about your wedding plans? Because it didn't seem relevant. We're both adults, we both deserve to have the weddings we want, and I didn't think it was fair to let Annette's choices dictate mine. But you specifically told Dad that he couldn't be at both, I pressed. You made him choose. I told him the truth, that he couldn't be in two places at once, and that he needed to decide what was most important to him. Sarah pulled out her phone and began reading from the screenshot messages. What about telling Julie that Dad would be better off celebrating with people who actually appreciate him? What about saying that Annette's too proud to ask for help but expects it anyway? The room went silent except for the tick of Mom's old clock on the mantel. Dad looked at Clara with an expression I'd never seen before, like he was trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. You said those things about your sister. I said that Annette has always been independent and that maybe she doesn't need the same level of support that I do. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that we're different people with different needs. Show him the part about the scholarship, Marcus said quietly. I'd been dreading this moment, but I knew it was necessary. Dad, do you remember when I lost the State University scholarship, senior year of high school? Of course. You decided that nursing at the community college would be a better fit for you. Clara helped you figure out all the paperwork. I never decided that. Clara decided that for me. She forged my signature on withdrawal paperwork and told the university that I was having a family emergency and couldn't attend. Dad's face went pale. That's impossible. You signed those papers. I saw them. You saw Clara's forgery of my signature. Sarah has copies of the original documents that were filed with the university, including the letter explaining my supposed family crisis. Sarah handed him another set of printouts. These are from the scholarship committee's files. They were disappointed to lose such a promising student and mentioned several times how unusual it was for a valedictorian to withdraw just weeks before graduation. Dad read the documents with shaking hands, his breathing growing more labored with each page. Clara, what is this? What are they talking about? Clara stood up abruptly, her composure finally cracking. They're trying to destroy our family the day before my wedding. This is exactly what I mean about Annette always needing to be the center of attention. Answer the question, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Did you forge my signature on scholarship withdrawal paperwork? I was trying to protect you. You were 17 years old, terrified of leaving home right after Mom's death, and you kept saying you didn't know if you could handle college so far away. I was looking out for my little sister. By stealing a full ride to State University? By destroying my chance at the honors program? By making me spend 5 extra years getting my degree while working minimum wage jobs? Dad was still staring at the paperwork, his hands trembling. The scholarship was for medical school preparation, pre-med track. Annette, You wanted to be a doctor. Yes, Dad. I wanted to be a pediatric surgeon. That's why Id spent 4 years taking every advanced science class available, why Id volunteered at the children's hospital, why Id written my valediction speech about healing and hope. The memory of that speech, never given because Id been too devastated about the lost scholarship to attend graduation, brought tears to my eyes. Id practiced it 100 times in front of Mom's photo, imagining how proud she'd be to see her daughter speak about following dreams and serving others. But you became a nurse, Dad said weakly. You love being a nurse. I do love nursing. But I became a nurse because it was the only medical career I could afford after Clara stole my future. I spent 5 years rebuilding from nothing while she used my scholarship connections to land, internships, and job opportunities that should have been mine. Clara was backing toward the door, her face flushed with what looked like panic. This is ridiculous. You can't prove any of this. Actually, we can. Sarah pulled out one final document. This is a copy of the original scholarship application, including the personal statement and career goals section. Would you like me to read Annette's essay about how losing her mother inspired her to pursue pediatric medicine so she could help other children facing medical crises? Dad's breath came out in a shuddering exhale as the full scope of Clara's deception became clear. 12 years of believing that I'd chosen a different path, that I'd been too scared or too immature to pursue my dreams, that Clara had been the helpful sister guiding me toward a more realistic future. The scholarship was worth $200,000, I said softly. Full tuition, room and board, medical school placement guarantee, research opportunities. Everything I'd worked for since I was 14 years old and decided I wanted to save children's lives. Annette, Dad whispered, and for the first time in years, I heard genuine anguish in his voice. Clara made one last desperate attempt to control the narrative. Even if I made mistakes, that was 12 years ago. We were all grieving, Mom. We were all confused, and I was trying to keep this family together while dealing with my own pain. You were 18 years old, not 8, Marcus said coldly. Old enough to know that forging someone's signature is a felony. Old enough to understand that stealing your sister's future would impact the rest of her life. And you've been covering up that theft for 12 years, Sarah added, building an entire web of lies to make sure no one ever questioned what really happened. Dad stood up slowly, like head aged a decade in the past hour. Clara, I need you to leave. I need time to think about all this. Dad, you can't possibly believe them over me. I'm your daughter. I've been taking care of you since Mom died. I've been working at your company, helping build your business, making sure you were never alone. You've been making sure I was isolated from my other daughter, Dad said, his voice hollow with realization. Making sure I believed she didn't need me, didn't want me around, was too busy with her new life to care about her old one. Clara's mask finally fell completely, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. She was too busy. She moved away, got her fancy job, found her perfect boyfriend. She didn't need us anymore. So you decided she shouldn't have us at all. The silence that followed was deafening. Clara looked around the room at faces that were no longer buying her explanations, no longer willing to give her the benefit of the doubt, no longer seeing her as the helpful daughter who'd sacrificed for family. Fine, she said finally. Have your precious reunion. But don't come crying to me when you realize that some people can't be forgiven. Some mistakes are too big to fix. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, pausing only to deliver one final blow. Oh, and Annette? Your wedding is still going to be a disaster. Because even if Daddy walks you down the aisle tomorrow, everyone will know it's only because I couldn't be bothered to show up and stop him. The front door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle Mom's picture frames on the mantel. Dad sank back into his chair, his face buried in his hands. Oh, God, Annette. What have I done? What have I let her do to you? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with 12 years of lost time and misdirected blame. But for the first time since that devastating phone call, I felt something other than heartbreak. I felt hope. The next morning, the day of my wedding, I woke up in my childhood bedroom for the first time in 3 years. Dad had insisted we stay the night, promising to drive down for the ceremony and reception. Head spent hours apologizing, trying to piece together the extent of Clara's manipulations, asking questions that revealed just how thoroughly Shed controlled the narrative of our family dynamics. Marcus was in the guest room down the hall, and Sarah had claimed the couch, turning our unexpected sleepover into something that felt almost normal. Almost like the family gatherings I'd dreamed of having but had somehow never quite managed to arrange. Dad was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs, looking like he hadn't slept at all. Coffee was brewing, and Head set out the good china that Mom used to save for special occasions. "I called Harold last night," he said without preamble. "Asked him to meet us here this morning. There are some things about the business that I need to understand." Harold Franklin had been Dad's business partner for 15 years, a steady presence who'd helped build Franklin Construction from a two-man operation into one of the most respected contractors in northern Vermont. He was also one of the few people who'd never quite warmed to Clara's increasingly prominent role in company operations. What kind of things? Financial irregularities. Harold's been trying to bring them to my attention for months, but Clara always had explanations. Always made it seem like Harold was being overly cautious or didn't understand the new accounting software Shed implemented. The doorbell rang before I could ask for details. Harold stood on the front step looking grim and carrying a laptop bag that seemed too heavy for casual business discussion. "Bob, I'm glad you finally called. We need to talk." He nodded politely to me. "Congratulations on your wedding, Annette. Your father's been looking forward to this day for months. Looking forward to it until Clara convinced him he had other priorities. But I didn't say that out loud." We gathered around the dining room table, Harold opening his laptop and pulling out folders of documents that looked official and ominous. "I've been conducting a quiet audit of our accounts for the past 6 months," Harold began. "What I found is concerning enough that I've been debating whether to call in outside investigators." Dad's coffee cup clinked against the saucer as he set it down with unsteady hands. How concerning. $150,000 in questionable transactions over the past 2 years. All authorized by Clara, all with documentation that doesn't quite add up under scrutiny. Harold spread out bank statements, invoices, and expense reports across Mom's dining table. Even with my limited understanding of business finances, I could see patterns that looked wrong. Vendor payments to companies that didn't seem to exist, employee bonuses to people I'd never heard of, equipment purchases that had somehow never resulted in actual equipment. I tried to discuss this with you several times, but Clara always intercepted the conversations. Shed explained that these were new vendors Shed found, temporary employees for specific projects, equipment that was being delivered directly to job sites, and you believed her. I wanted to believe her. "Shay's your daughter. Shed been working here for 5 years, and she always had plausible explanations." But when I started digging deeper, none of the vendors could be contacted, none of the employees existed in our payroll system, and none of the equipment had ever been delivered. Dad studied the documents with the focused attention of someone trying to understand how his world had been turned upside down. Where did the money go? Personal accounts. Clara's been very careful about how she moved it, creating multiple steps and legitimate-looking paperwork, but ultimately, it all ends up funding her lifestyle. Harold clicked through bank records on his laptop. The $50,000 for her wedding came directly from fraudulent vendor payments. The down payment on her new car, the European vacation last spring, the designer furniture for her apartment, all of it funded by systematically stealing from your business. I felt sick. Not just because Clara had been stealing, but because of the calculated nature of it all. The scholarship theft had been opportunistic, a teenager making a terrible decision in a moment of jealousy and grief. This was sustained criminal activity spanning years. "There's more," Harold said, his voice growing even more serious. "She's been setting you up to take the blame." He pulled out a different set of documents, these bearing Dad's forged signature on authorization forms for the fraudulent expenses. "She's created a paper trail suggesting that you approved all these questionable transactions. If this gets reported to tax authorities or law enforcement, you'll be the one facing charges while she positions herself as the whistleblower who discovered your embezzlement." The room spun around me. Clara hadn't just been stealing money. She'd been planning to destroy Dad's life and freedom while positioning herself as the victim and the hero. She's been planning this for months, I said, pieces clicking into place. The wedding, the manipulation, the financial crimes, all of it designed to leave her in control of everything, while Dad and I are isolated and blamed. Marcus, who'd been listening silently, leaned forward. What happens after Bob gets arrested for embezzlement? Clara inherits the business, Harold said. She's the beneficiary on his insurance policies. She's been added to bank accounts over the years, and she's positioned herself as the responsible daughter who's been trying to hold everything together despite her father's poor decisions. And I'm the other daughter who abandoned the family and couldn't be bothered to notice Dad's supposed financial problems, I added. The one who was too selfish and self-absorbed to see that he needed help. Dad's face had gone gray. She was going to send me to prison. Worse than that, Harold said. She was going to make everyone believe you deserved to be there. Your employees, your clients, your friends, your community, they'd all see you as the man who stole from his own business while his devoted daughter tried to save it. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Clara hadn't just wanted to steal money or sabotage my wedding. She'd wanted to completely destroy the lives of everyone who might interfere with her plans. We have to stop her, I said. We have to be careful, Harold corrected. She's smart, she's prepared, and she's been building this case for 2 years. If we move too quickly, she'll trigger her plan and disappear with whatever money she hasn't already spent. What do you recommend? Harold closed his laptop and gathered the documents into neat piles. We document everything, we gather additional evidence, and we wait for her to make a mistake. She's gotten overconfident, sloppy about covering her tracks. Eventually, she'll create an opening we can exploit. I don't have time to wait, I said. My wedding is in 6 hours. Clara's getting married tomorrow. If she's planning to disappear after framing Dad, this weekend might be our only chance to catch her. Dad looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Annette, you shouldn't have to deal with this on your wedding day. This is my problem, my failure to see what was happening. No, Dad, this is our family. Clara made it our problem when she decided to destroy all of us. Sarah, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet during Harold's presentation, suddenly spoke up. What if we don't wait for her to make a mistake? What if we force her to make one? All eyes turned to her. What are you thinking? She's expecting Annette's wedding to be a disaster. She's counting on Bob being devastated and isolated, easy to manipulate. But what if instead she shows up to a celebration where everyone knows the truth? Where her victims are surrounded by people who love them and support them. You want to confront her at the wedding, Marcus asked. I want to give her enough rope to hang herself. Let her see that her plans have failed, that her manipulations have been exposed, and watch her panic into making mistakes that Harold can document. It was risky. It meant turning my wedding day into a potential crime scene. But it also meant taking control of the narrative, instead of letting Clara write the ending. I looked around the table at these people who'd spent the morning helping me understand the scope of my sister's betrayal. Harold, who'd risked his business partnership to investigate financial crimes. Sarah, who'd spent her own time and energy uncovering evidence. Marcus, who'd supported me through every revelation without once suggesting that maybe we should just elope and avoid the drama. And Dad, who was finally seeing Clara clearly and looked devastated by what he was learning about both his daughters. Okay, I said. Let's catch her. Harold was already reaching for his phone. I'll contact my lawyer. Make sure we have legal coverage for anything that happens today. And I'll bring additional documentation to the wedding, just in case we need it. Are you sure about this? Dad asked. Once we go down this path, there's no going back. Clara will be facing serious criminal charges. She's already facing them, I replied. The only question is whether she gets away with destroying our family first. As we began planning our strategy for the most unconventional wedding day in history, I realized that for the first time in 12 years, I wasn't fighting Clara alone. I had allies, evidence, and most importantly, the truth. Clara had spent years positioning herself as the victim, the helper, the daughter who sacrificed everything for family. Today, she was about to learn what it felt like when her victims fought back. The Riverside Community Center had been transformed into something magical. Sarah and her team of volunteer nurses had arrived at 6 a.m. to hang lights, arrange flowers, and set up the simple but elegant decorations that Id spent months planning and saving for. White fabric draped the walls, mason jars filled with wildflowers lined the windowsills, and strings of warm Edison bulbs created a golden glow that made everything feel like a fairy tale. I stood in the small preparation room, staring at myself in Mom's antique mirror that Sarah had somehow transported from Burlington. The wedding dress was simple, elegant, and completely paid for with my own money. Everything about this day represented the life Id built through my own choices and hard work. "You look beautiful," Dad said from the doorway, and I turned to see him in his best suit, the one head worn to Mom's funeral and every important occasion since. "Thank you for being here. I know this whole situation has been. Don't apologize for your sister's choices, and don't thank me for doing what I should have been doing all along." The door burst open and Sarah rushed in, looking frazzled. "We have a problem." Clara just pulled up outside with 2 police officers. My stomach dropped. "What?" "She's claiming there's been a financial crime related to the wedding expenses and that she needs to speak with you immediately." Through the small window, I could see Clara striding across the parking lot in an expensive black dress that seemed inappropriate for a wedding guest, flanked by 2 uniformed officers who looked uncomfortable with whatever story Shed told them. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Harold's in the main hall with his lawyer and all the documentation we discussed. Whatever she's planning, we're ready." What could she possibly be claiming? Identity theft, fraud, forgery related to wedding vendor payments. "She's telling the police that you've been stealing from your father's business to fund your wedding," Sarah explained. The irony was so complete it would have been funny if my entire wedding wasn't about to be destroyed by it. Clara was publicly accusing me of the exact crimes she'd been committing for years. "She's panicking," Dad realized. "Harold's audit spooked her, so she's trying to flip the script before we can expose her." "We need to get out there," I said, smoothing my dress and checking my appearance one last time. "If she wants to play this game in front of my friends and family, then let's play." The main hall buzzed with confused voices as Clara directed the police officers toward the head table where Harold sat with his lawyer, a woman named Jennifer Park, who specialized in white-collar crime defense. "Excuse me, officers, but there seems to be some confusion," Jennifer said, standing as we approached. "I'm representing Mr. Franklin and his business interests, and we've been expecting this conversation." Clara's confident expression flickered for just a moment. "Expecting what conversation?" "The one where we discuss the $150,000 you've embezzled from Franklin Construction over the past 2 years, including the $50,000 you used to fund your own wedding." The wedding guests, a mixture of my nursing colleagues, Marcus' teacher friends, and various community members, fell silent as the drama unfolded in front of them. "That's ridiculous," Clara said, but her voice had lost its usual commanding tone. "I'm here because my sister has been forging my father's signature on business checks to pay for this wedding. I have bank records, I have documentation." "You have forgeries," Harold interrupted, pulling out his laptop. "Very good ones, but forgeries nonetheless. Miss Park, would you like to show the officers our evidence?" Jennifer Park opened a thick folder and began laying out bank statements, vendor records, and employee documentation on a nearby table. "Officers, what we have here is a systematic embezzlement scheme spanning multiple years, with evidence of document forgery, identity theft, and tax fraud." The police officers, clearly out of their depth with financial crimes, began examining the documents, while Clara's composure continued to crack. "This is insane. These people are trying to frame me because they can't handle being exposed as thieves." "Actually," I said, stepping forward with a clarity that surprised me, "we're trying to protect other people from becoming your next victims." I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. "Officers, would you like to hear Clara confessing to stealing my scholarship 12 years ago, or should we start with her admitting to the wedding date manipulation?" Clara's face went pale. You can't record private family conversations without consent. Actually, in Vermont, I only need one-party consent to record conversations I'm participating in, and yesterday's conversation at Dad's house was very enlightening. I pressed play, and Clara's voice filled the community center. Even if I made mistakes, that was 12 years ago. We were all grieving, Mom. We were all confused, and I was trying to keep this family together while dealing with my own pain. What you're hearing. I explained to the officers. Is Clara admitting to forging my signature on scholarship withdrawal paperwork, which constitutes identity theft and fraud? The scholarship was worth $200,000 and included guaranteed medical school placement. Marcus stepped forward with additional evidence. I'm a former FBI financial analyst. These vendor payments Clara authorized show classic patterns of embezzlement. Fake companies, phantom employees, equipment purchases that never resulted in deliveries. The police officers looked increasingly uncomfortable with the complexity of the situation, but Jennifer Park was clearly in her element. Officers were prepared to file formal complaints for embezzlement, tax fraud, forgery, and identity theft. We have documentation, witness testimony, and recorded confessions. Clara made one last desperate attempt to regain control. You can't possibly believe these people over me. I've been trying to protect my father from financial mistakes. I've been working to keep his business solvent, and this is how I'm repaid. By stealing $150,000, Harold asked. By setting up your father to take the blame for your crimes? By destroying your sister's future and then sabotaging her wedding? The wedding guests were now openly staring, phones out, recording everything. Clara's public destruction was being documented by dozens of witnesses. Mrs. Morrison, one of the officers, said, "You're going to need to come with us for questioning. These are serious allegations that require investigation. This is ridiculous. It's my wedding weekend. I'm supposed to be celebrating tomorrow. You're supposed to be in jail." Sarah said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "For stealing your sister's scholarship, embezzling from your father, and trying to frame him for your crimes." As the officers began discussing logistics with Jennifer Park, Clara turned to Dad with tears that looked genuine for the first time all weekend. "Daddy, you can't let them do this to me. I'm your daughter. I've been taking care of you since Mom died." Dad looked at her with an expression of complete devastation. "You haven't been taking care of me, Clara. You've been using me. There's a difference. I made mistakes, but everything I did was for this family. Everything you did was to this family," I corrected. "You stole my future, poisoned my relationship with Dad, and planned to send him to prison so you could inherit his business. That's not protecting family. That's destroying it." Clara's final mask slipped completely, revealing something cold and calculating that made several wedding guests step back. "Fine. You want to know the truth? You're right. About all of it. I took your scholarship because you didn't deserve it. I manipulated Dad because he was too stupid to see what was best for him. I stole from the business because I earned that money more than he did. And yes, I would have let him take the blame, because some sacrifices are necessary for the greater good." The confession was so complete, so devoid of remorse, that even the police officers looked shocked. "And the greater good was you inheriting everything?" Marcus asked. "The greater good was me, being in charge instead of people who are too weak and too naive to make hard decisions." Jennifer Park was writing furiously, documenting every word of Clara's meltdown. "Officers, I believe we have sufficient grounds for immediate arrest." As Clara was read her rights and led toward the police car, she turned back one final time. "This isn't over. You think you've won something, but all you've done is destroy our family forever." "No," I called after her. "You destroyed our family 12 years ago. We're just finally rebuilding it without you." The police car pulled away, taking Clara and her years of manipulation with it. The wedding guests erupted in applause and supportive cheers, rallying around us like we'd just survived a battle. Which, I realized, we had. Dad was crying openly now, his face a mixture of relief and devastation. "Annette, can you ever forgive me? For believing her, for choosing her, for letting her hurt you for so many years?" "Well, figure it out," I said, meaning it. "One day at a time. But first, I have a wedding to finish. Marcus took my hand, his eyes shining with pride and love. Ready to marry me, Mrs. Future Doctor? What? Your scholarship, Dad said, wiping his eyes. Jennifer says we can file to have it restored since it was obtained through fraud. You can still go to medical school, still become the pediatric surgeon you always wanted to be. I looked around at the community center, full of people who'd just witnessed the most dramatic family confrontation in wedding history, and I started laughing. Not the hysterical laughter of someone having a breakdown, but the genuine joy of someone who'd just realized that sometimes fighting back actually works. Yes, I told Marcus. I'm ready to marry you, and then I'm ready to start studying for the MCAT. The ceremony continued with Dad walking me down the aisle, just as had originally promised. But this time, it meant something different. This time, it was the beginning of a family built on truth instead of manipulation, love instead of guilt, and choices instead of obligations. Clara had been right about one thing. This wedding would be one that everyone remembered, but not for the reasons Shed intended. The reception began with a toast from Harold that wasn't quite what anyone expected for a wedding celebration. To Annette and Marcus, he said, raising his glass of champagne, who taught us today that sometimes the best way to celebrate love is to refuse to let evil destroy it. The crowd cheered with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for sporting events. My nursing colleagues were comparing the day's events to their favorite medical dramas. Marcus' teacher friends were already planning how to turn this story into a lesson about standing up to bullies, and the various community members were clearly thrilled to have witnessed the most dramatic wedding in local history. But the real celebration happened when Jennifer Park approached our head table with news that would make this day even more perfect than it imagined. I've been on the phone with the Vermont Attorney General's office, she announced. Clara's confession was recorded by multiple witnesses, and the financial evidence is substantial enough to warrant federal charges. Federal charges? Dad asked. Mail fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion, identity theft across state lines. She's looking at significant prison time, and more importantly, she'll be required to make full restitution for everything she's stolen. Marcus nearly choked on his champagne. Everything. The scholarship money, the business embezzlement, even the fraudulent expenses from her wedding plans. The court will liquidate her assets to compensate her victims. I felt lighter than I had in years, like I'd been carrying a weight I hadn't even realized was there. How long will that take? For the criminal case? Probably 18 months to 2 years. But we can start the restitution process immediately, especially since she confessed publicly. Sarah grabbed my hand, bouncing with excitement. Do you realize what this means? You can apply to medical school for next year's program. You could be a doctor by the time you're 32. 32 had always seemed impossibly old when I was 17 and planning my original timeline. Now it felt like a gift, a second chance I'd never expected to receive. There's more, Jennifer continued. I've spoken with the state university about restoring your scholarship eligibility. Since you were a victim of fraud, they're willing to honor the original terms, adjusted for current tuition rates. Dad was openly crying again. Annette, I'm so sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry for every year you lost, every dream you had to postpone because I couldn't see what was right in front of me. Dad, we can't change the past, but we can make sure the future is different. No, I need to say this, in front of everyone. He stood up, tapping his fork against his glass to get the crowd's attention. I have something to tell you all about my daughter. The reception hall quieted as Dad prepared to speak publicly about our family's private pain. 12 years ago, I failed Annette in the worst possible way. I believed lies instead of investigating the truth. I favored one daughter over another instead of loving them equally. I let manipulation replace honest communication, and I nearly lost the most honest, hardworking, compassionate person I know. His voice broke, but he continued. Annette, you never gave up on becoming a healer, even when the path got harder. You never stopped being kind, even when you had every reason to be bitter. You never stopped loving your family, even when we didn't deserve it. He turned to address the crowd. Today, justice was served. My daughter will get her scholarship back, her stolen dreams back, her rightful place in this family back. But more importantly, she taught all of us that sometimes you have to fight for the truth, even when it hurts people you love. The applause was thunderous. I looked around at faces that were genuinely happy for my vindication, people who'd supported me through years of difficulty without knowing the full story of why things had been so hard. Mrs. Chen from the pediatric ward stood up. If we're sharing, I have something to say too. Annette, you've been like a daughter to me since you started working at the hospital. Watching you care for sick children, seeing how you connect with families in crisis, knowing how you put everyone else's needs before your own, I always wondered why someone with your calling hadn't gone to medical school. She smiled through tears. Now I know it wasn't because you weren't good enough. It was because someone tried to steal your opportunities. Well, they failed. You're going to be an incredible doctor. Dr. Peterson, the head of pediatrics, raised his glass. To Dr. Annette, class of 2028. Dr. Annette, class of 2028, the crowd echoed. Marcus leaned over to whisper in my ear. How does it feel to be married to a future pediatric surgeon? Like everything that happened was worth it to get to this moment. Sarah was already pulling out her laptop, researching medical school application deadlines and MCAT testing schedules. If you start studying now, you could take the test in January and apply for programs starting next fall. Slow down, I laughed. Let me finish my honeymoon first. Where are you going? Harold asked. Marcus grinned. Boston Children's Hospital. Annette's going to shadow the pediatric surgery team for a week, just to make sure her dreams are still the same after all these years. It was perfect. Everything about this day had been perfect, not because it had gone according to plan, but because it had revealed the truth and given us a chance to rebuild on a foundation of honesty instead of lies. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, each person stopped to congratulate us not just on our marriage, but on our victory over Clara's manipulation. Stories emerged of their own experiences with family members who'd used guilt and gaslighting to control others. Support groups were forming organically, people sharing resources for dealing with psychological manipulation and financial abuse. Jennifer Park handed me her business card. I'm going to be representing several of Clara's other victims as this case develops. You started something today that's going to help a lot of people, other victims. Your cousin Daniel wants to pursue charges for the college fund theft. Your Uncle Thomas is filing complaints about the fraudulent investment scheme. And we've been contacted by 3 of Clara's former employers about suspicious financial activity during her previous jobs. The scope of Clara's criminal behavior was apparently much larger than any of us had realized. She had been systematically victimizing family members and colleagues for years, always moving on before anyone could piece together the full picture. She won't be able to hurt anyone else, Jennifer assured me. Federal prison, full restitution, and enough evidence to ensure she serves the maximum sentence. As Marcus and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, Dad pulled me aside for one final conversation. I know I can't undo 12 years of mistakes with apologies and promises, but I want you to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you have the support you should have had all along. What does that mean? It means Harold and I are restructuring the business. Clara's position is eliminated, her access is revoked, and 50% of my ownership is being transferred to you immediately. I stared at him. Dad, I don't want your business. I'm not giving it to you. I'm giving you the choice of what to do with it. Sell your share to fund medical school, keep it as an investment while you practice medicine, or donate it to a scholarship fund for other students who've had their opportunities stolen. Your choice, not mine. And what about Clara's inheritance? What inheritance? She stole everything she would have received, plus interest and penalties. The only thing Clara inherits now is the consequences of her choices. It was justice on a scale I'd never imagined possible. Not just personal vindication, but systematic protection for future victims, and genuine accountability for the person who'd caused so much harm. As Marcus and I drove away from the community center, I looked back one last time at the building where I'd just married my best friend and reclaimed my stolen future. Tomorrow, we'd start planning for medical school. Next year, I'd be studying pediatric surgery. In 5 years, I'd be Dr. Annette Franklin Martinez, helping children and families facing medical crises. Clara had tried to steal my dreams, but all she'd really done was delay them. And sometimes, dreams that take longer to achieve taste even sweeter when they finally come true. 18 months later, I stood in the pediatric surgery ward of Johns Hopkins Hospital, wearing scrubs with my name embroidered on the pocket, Dr. A. Franklin Martinez, surgical resident. The dream that had been stolen from me at 17 had finally become reality at 29, and every day felt like a gift I'd fought to earn. Clara had been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole before serving at least 5 years. The restitution order required her to pay back over $300,000, covering not just my scholarship and Dad's business losses, but compensation for Uncle Thomas, Cousin Daniel, and 6 other victims who'd come forward during the investigation. Her wedding to Jason had been canceled when he learned about her crimes, and her carefully constructed life of manipulation and theft had collapsed entirely. The last I'd heard, she was working in the prison laundry for 42 cents an hour, trying to pay off debts that would follow her for the rest of her life. Justice had been thorough and complete. Dr. Franklin Martinez, your next patient is a 7-year-old girl with appendicitis. Families in room 3, the attending physician announced. I smiled at the title I'd worked so hard to earn. The little girl, Emma, was scared and crying for her mother when I entered the room. Her parents looked exhausted and worried, exactly the way families always do when their child needs emergency surgery. "Hi, Emma," I said, kneeling down to her eye level. "I'm Dr. Annette, and I'm here to make your tummy feel better. Is it going to hurt? We're going to give you special medicine that makes you sleep through the whole thing. When you wake up, the pain will be gone, and you can have ice cream." Emma's tears slowed. "What flavor ice cream? What flavor do you want?" "Strawberry." "Then strawberry it is." As I explained the procedure to her parents and prepared Emma for surgery, I thought about the path that had brought me to this moment. 12 years of detours, setbacks, and stolen opportunities had led to a deeper understanding of how precious these dreams really are. My nursing experience had made me a better medical student and a more compassionate surgeon. The financial struggles had taught me resourcefulness and determination. Even Clara's betrayal had shown me the importance of fighting for truth and protecting others from manipulation. Everything that had been meant to destroy me had actually prepared me for this moment when a scared little girl needed someone who understood both medicine and healing. After Emma's successful surgery, I found Marcus in the family waiting area where he was grading papers for his high school biology class. Had taken a teaching position in Baltimore to support my residency, and somehow our marriage had gotten stronger through every challenge we'd faced. "How did it go?" he asked, looking up from a stack of essays about cellular respiration. "Perfect. Clean appendectomy, no complications, happy patient." "And how are you doing?" "Grateful. Every single day, grateful." Marcus smiled the way he had on our wedding day, when we'd turned family drama into the foundation for a stronger future. "Any word from your dad?" "Hez driving down next weekend for my birthday. Harold's coming too. They're bringing updates on the business and pictures of the new scholarship program." The Annette Franklin Medical Education Fund had been established using Clara's restitution payments and matching contributions from Dad's business. It provided full scholarships to students who'd had their educational opportunities disrupted by family trauma or financial crime. This year, it was supporting 12 students, including 2 who'd been victims of identity theft, similar to what Clara had done to me. "Sarah texted that she got accepted to nurse practitioner school," Marcus said. "Apparently your story inspired her to pursue her own delayed dreams." Sarah had been promoted to charge nurse in the pediatric ICU and was now studying to become a pediatric nurse practitioner. She credited our wedding day confrontation with Clara as the moment she realized that standing up for yourself could actually work. My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Margaret, who'd become the family matriarch we'd never had. "Family dinner Sunday? I'm making your mother's pot roast recipe." Margaret had moved back to Burlington to help Dad rebuild his emotional and business relationships. She'd also become the unofficial family archivist, gathering stories and photos from relatives who'd been estranged by Clara's manipulations. We were discovering cousins and connections that had been severed by years of lies and poisonous gossip. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked, noticing my reflective mood, about how different everything could have been. If Clara had succeeded, if Wed never found the evidence, if people hadn't been willing to speak up. But they did speak up. You spoke up. That's what made the difference. He was right. The turning point hadn't been discovering Clara's crimes. It had been deciding to fight back instead of accepting the narrative Shed created. "Dr. Franklin Martinez, we need you in OR3. A nurse called from down the hallway. Another surgery. Another chance to use the skills and knowledge Id fought to acquire. As I headed back to work, I thought about Emma and her strawberry ice cream, about her parents' relief when I told them their daughter was going to be fine. 12 years ago, Clara had told me I didn't deserve my scholarship, didn't deserve the opportunities it earned, didn't deserve to have my dreams supported by family. She'd been wrong about everything except one thing. I didn't just deserve those opportunities. It earned them twice over. Every patient I helped, every surgery I performed, every family I comforted through medical crisis was proof that stolen dreams don't stay stolen forever. Sometimes they just take longer to achieve, and when they finally happen, they mean more than they would have originally. Clara had spent years positioning herself as the victim, the helper, the daughter who sacrificed everything for family. But real sacrifice looks different than manipulation. Real helping builds people up instead of tearing them down. Real family love doesn't require anyone to give up their dreams or accept less than they deserve. Standing in the surgical prep area, washing my hands and preparing to save another child's life, I realized something important. I wasn't grateful that Clara had stolen my scholarship, but I was grateful for every step of the journey that had brought me here, including the detours and delays that had taught me things I never would have learned on the original path. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming exactly who you were meant to be despite every attempt to stop you. Emma was waiting for her strawberry ice cream when I checked on her after surgery. Her parents were crying happy tears, and she was chattering excitedly about how her tummy didn't hurt anymore. "Dr. Annette," she said sleepily, "thank you for making me feel better." "Thank you for letting me," I replied, and meant every word. Have you ever had to fight for dreams that someone tried to steal from you? What would you do if a family member was sabotaging your biggest opportunities? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing your stories and knowing I'm not alone in this journey. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more stories about family challenges and personal triumph, and share it with anyone who needs to hear that stolen dreams can be reclaimed. Your support means everything to me, and it helps other people find these stories when they need them most. Thank you for listening to my story, and for being part of this community, where we can share our struggles and celebrate our victories together. Remember, you are stronger than the people who try to limit you, and your dreams are worth fighting for, no matter how long it takes to achieve them. Until next time, keep believing in yourself, and never let anyone convince you that you don't deserve the life you're working to build. Take care, and I'll see you in the next story.